Okay, so this week there was no game, mainly because with a lot of stuff that went on, we weren't able to get enough players together for Roken to play. It was basically um, I spend most of my time usually working on stuff when I don't have to play, or well, when I don't have to run. And I say have to. I do enjoy running. It is something I do voluntarily, but it does take time out of my day. So, with that being said, I tend to try and keep my weeks free when I can. And everybody else kind of really couldn't make it, so we decided that we weren't going to do any running or anything this week. And that left me kind of going, well, I still want to do something for everybody. And I kind of thought about, well, we'll kind of do this kind of Q&A style thing, and as a kind of busybody type thing for me, um, I'm going to be working on some coding. I may hop back and forth between what I work on. Right now, I am currently going to be working in Visual Studio, doing some C#. If you guys want to ask me about what I'm working on, perfectly fine. Anything's game. I say anything's game, but I also reserve the right to deny answer to any question if it's uncomfortable. Though I don't expect that anybody will go to uncomfortable places. But if you got questions about the campaign, I will do my best to answer as well as I can. So if I can't answer, I'm sorry. If you got any other questions related to channel, what we're doing, oh, I do actually need to make one small change. So at and we should be back to playing next Sunday. So this is so yeah. I just updated our text on Twitch. Anyways, completely off topic. So, anyways, hope you guys are having a good time, and I'm gonna make some edits that I usually do, but I was trying to figure out a few things before getting on. And hopefully this will run smoother. I am gonna very quickly pull up stream, make sure we're all healthy, we're all good. Because I hope that everything's being all happy on our stream today. Okay. And whatever. Yeah, we're gonna have to Google it to go. So, how is everybody? How are you all doing? I do have Twitch chat up. I can see it. I can see you lovely people if you want to talk. But and if people don't ask questions and things, I will probably just kind of actively work on what I'm doing as soon as I get some stuff checked out, just to make sure that this all is making sure that we're streaming in good enough quality that it makes sense for what I'm doing. Because I do have to worry with this, especially that the text is readable, and so if people ask me specific questions about what I'm doing, I can. It's not just this blur on the screen. And I'm probably actually even gonna kind of slide this over so we can have a little bit. I don't know. Kind of zoom in. So, yep. Next week, hopefully, we'll be back to, like I said, the regular schedule. I just this week ended up with Lauren leaving for her trip. We weren't going to be able to have enough players playing any game, so we didn't want to have a game running with like one player or two players. Even though we two players actually probably would have been fine, but it was looking like probably only one player. So, yep. I need to reopen some tabs. So, feel free to ask questions and actually probably what I'll do for now. And it lets me. Okay. All right. I'm just updating the headline just so people know what's up, what's going on, what's chilling. So, and if there's any problem with the stream, do let me know. This shouldn't have any problems with the recording. Real quick, pop up. Yep. Oh, crap. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, I gotta get back to work on this, and I think we were in reflections. Add new item. This isn't the most riveting programming I've ever done, but it's nice busy work to do while I stream. I'll probably go most of the normal time for our games, but I might end a little bit earlier. All depends on how things go. I'm gonna say that this will require, yeah, require function reflection. Graphics. I'm great at typing, I promise. Is it shader or shaders? Shader. Okay. This is a part of the shader library. Build. As soon as I get done with this, I'm probably gonna have to go back and do a whole bunch of minor cleanup. We need a light. Library description. And just so people know, I do recognize that if I made this a struct, I wouldn't have to put the public clause there. Really just comes down to a style choice, in my opinion. I chose to do this at the beginning, and so I've just kind of kept this with all of my stuff. Okay, we're gonna write what we're gonna do. We're gonna do public and compile flags. Oh wait, nope. Okay, that actually makes a big difference. Okay, that's BS as in vertex shader. Then we have the next one is almost identical, but yes, is an pixel shader. Oh, pre-shader equals 1. Oh no. 11. Prefer. There we go. And then there. Real quick. Okay. Yep. So, I think what we can do is we can instead replace this with the shader compile flags. Should give you the same output, except for in a nicer format. Cool. Oh, this does have, okay. I need to check how many of those have all of those. Okay, and then D12. And so this requires to include common interfaces. Which I want. Quick action. Okay. And what we do is we turn new platform imptr flip. And we just need unknown functions for flip. Okay. So that oh, and then we just have this one. Function reflection, managed pointer, function I X. Okay, so I shouldn't have this yet, so yep. Mhm. Well, chat is rather quiet tonight. Um, so I guess we'll do some. I'll just do some chatting while I'm working on this to fill time and space. So essentially, what I'm building here, and this is not a reference class. This is a value class. Because for those people who don't know, I am a programmer by trade. I say that while I'm still in school for being a programmer by trade. And I've focused on video games. More recently, rendering technology. Oh, this is going to be fun. And so, specifically with more recently, we've had the inception of DirectX 12. Now, DirectX 12 is an interesting beast, as it was not, it's not exactly what people want it to be. It's not entirely what it was hyped up to be, but it is where games seem to be headed, and it does allow for some interesting things that we can do that hasn't been allowed. Things that you haven't been able to do on PC before. Specifically, some of the stuff that I'm planning on working on for school, I can only do with DirectX 12. And that's just because DirectX 12 being a technology that allows you more control than previous DirectX, you have access to certain features that weren't allowed before because they were part of the wrapped package that was DirectX. Now, mind you, that doesn't make the continuing DirectX 11 any worse. Actually, I hope quickly they pick a very different naming scheme for the two different versions of DirectX, because DirectX 11 is not inferior to DirectX 12. Actually, strangely enough, after spending a week at GDC back in March, I've kind of learned that most of the time DirectX 11 does a better job than developers can do with DirectX 12. You get better functionality, better speed, better, you've got a better performance. Because DirectX 12 is different, more complicated, and not really all it was chalked up to be, like I've said a couple times here. When DirectX was originally talked about, DirectX 12, not DirectX, DirectX 12, it got this idea in people's heads that you could probably see like 20 to 30% increase, and from what a lot of developers have now kind of gone back and said is it's not really realistic. Not that you can't get performance increases, but the funny thing is performance increases are not the same all across the board. Certain things that you can do that make performance better in DirectX 12 won't apply to higher end machines, because a higher end machine isn't going to have that problem. It's and this really comes down to what's known as being CPU bound. For those people who aren't quite sure what that means, is your processor, your central processor, is generally a bottleneck for giving instructions, I guess is probably the best way to put it. When you write rendering code, the slowest part of the rendering pipeline is actually gathering all the data and sending it to the graphics card. The graphics card itself is been designed and improved to take in that data and deal with it very quickly to do what we want. Not that we still don't run into points where the graphics card becomes the problem, but more often it's that piece where you're trying to push information through your processor into the graphics card. We've found a couple things that let us cheat and make certain things faster, but it's still not one of those things that if you're on a lower end machine, you're more likely to struggle with your processor, because your processor's not going to be as nice as a graphics card. If you have a graphics card, that is where your power is in your machine if you're on a lower end machine. Because even to have a graphics card means that that's a decent bar to have. Now, if you don't have a graphics card and you have like a graphics chipset, like you usually find in laptops, not all laptops, if you have a higher end laptops also have full graphics cards, but that being said, chipsets, then they are pushing with, while the chipsets are designed to do certain things, you still put a larger load on the actual processor itself. So, the thing that DirectX 11 can't do that DirectX 12 could do, which has made it will make a big impact, is you can use multiple processing threads. And what that essentially comes down to is, with multi-core computers, we can do multiple things at once. But the way that DirectX 11 is structured, it is designed to only be doing one thing at a time. Now, the DirectX drivers were written in such a way that they sometimes would spin up extra processes and threads to assist in this process of doing whatever. You need to create a resource, you need to do this. It would try to spin up an extra resource, and that would help, but that also means that that's outside of the developer's hands, and you may not actually have available threads to spin up, as it was entirely in the hands of what the developers of a graphics card decided. Now, when we get to DirectX 12, everything is done serially. It's done one after the next. It's actually one of the things that graphics cards developers were told they were not allowed to do when developing their drivers, is they couldn't spin up extra threads. They couldn't try to allow the computer to multitask, because at that point it's now the choice of the developer when you multitask, when you do certain things. And then they also introduced the idea of a command list, where you used to just submit commands straight to the device. Now you have this list of commands that you can submit. Well, if we can submit lists, we can write to these lists in a separate thread. The problem with writing to a list in the same thread is you end up with the problem of, one second, primitive topology. Where that is. Cool. Primitive topology. Take a second. Why are you not collapsing yourself? One second. I need to find out if this needs to be somewhere else. But essentially, it gives the developer the choice, and now on top of that, we can record in multiple threads. So this and when you have that choice to run in multiple threads with your actual recording of information into these lists, that in and of itself allows for more multiprocessing and the way that you can do things. Nope, that is a D3D12. Okay. There is... Is it different? But I need to know. Ah, okay. So actually, I do want to take... You have... So we're going to take this, and we're going to collapse it. Cut. Here. Okay, and then in shader descriptions, add it in the names. Okay. Bam. Alright. And that's not the only thing that DirectX 12 has allowed in terms of optimization. It is one of the bigger things because it's one that's relatively easy to deal with. Video games in every way have been starting to go multi-threaded more and more. It's something that happens in everything we do. We just couldn't do it in rendering. So the problem is that's not everything. Anything similar to if type. Other than they're numbered different. Yeah, they're numbered differently. And it goes here. Oh, we don't have... Okay, so... Enter. I need primitive. Okay, and... goes point, line, triangle at 3. That's 6. This is not. That's 7. Alright. And 8. So, that being all said, kind of wrapping this back to what I'm doing here. Basically, what I'm doing here is making it so I can work in my preferred language, in my preferred environments, with DirectX 12. Kind of looping the story, why is it relevant? Now, the thing is I work in managed code. For those people who know it, there's multiple opinions on managed code, whether it's good to use, whether it's bad to use. Ultimately, the thing about managed code is kind of that step above pulling yourself out of it, out of the thick of it, and allowing someone else to handle certain things for you, which is kind of strange to use something like that when you have something like DirectX 12, because DirectX 12 is moving in the opposite direction, essentially. As DirectX 12 is limiting, instead of limiting the amount of control you have, it's giving you more control. Thing is C#, which is the managed language I work in, doesn't necessarily limit your control so much as it limits your perceived amount of control, which is kind of really funny way of saying that you have access to everything. It's just not thrown in your face, and actually it is most often said that you shouldn't access those sorts of functions, which isn't really a good way of putting it, because they're not really functions. One of the big things, and it's one of the big differences between managed code and unmanaged code, is the access to pointers. When you work in unmanaged code, for instance, DirectX, DirectX is the library. Sorry, not DirectX, C++. When you work in unmanaged code like C++, you have control over what are memory pointers, which are a way of giving access to memory without having to copy it multiple times. You instead copy an address, basically like the old card catalog style idea from old books, old libraries, where you could have multiple of the same cards that link to the same book, and they would allow you to access it. Thing about that is when you start dealing with multi-threaded things, you need to worry about not trying to access the same location at the same time, because it's kind of like having two cards and then having two people trying to get the same book at the same time. Obviously, one person's going to get there first. What happens with the second person? Normally, with the books, you would expect that they just move on with their day. Unfortunately, a computer the book isn't actually removed, so they both attempt to access it at the same time, which doesn't always work. It sometimes does, though. Perfectly fine. If you're, for instance, just reading information, you can read information from in as many places at the same moment, the same instant, without any problems. But if you end up making one write requires that the memory is touched by nothing else. Now, this is a problem in managed, unmanaged, all sorts of things have the problem of dealing with multiple accesses at the same time, multiple writes or a read and a write at the same time. The big difference between managed is there is a way to deal with pointers getting created, removed, and ultimately removing the initial memory should the pointers be destroyed. Which basically it's what's called being out of scope. The pointer, an object that you've created is no longer referenced by anything. No one has a pointer, a link to it. So managed code goes and says, okay, well, we know that there are no references left, so bye, and lets it go. Mind you, this takes a little bit of extra effort to keep this up. And in order to not cause too many problems, it tries to bulk things up. Problem with that being, if you're not careful, you can very quickly use managed code, which seems like it should be safe, and end up you'll never run into problems with what's known as memory leak, which is in unmanaged code. It's not output, it's partitioning. But it's this idea where you, instead of having that managed backing, that when a location in memory that was being used loses all references, it gets deleted. Unmanaged code doesn't do that. Doesn't do it for you, but at the benefit of improved speed. Well-written managed code versus well-written unmanaged code is supposed to be about a 5% difference, but that depends on compilers and a lot of factors. That's like best case scenario, and that's considering that they are both well written, which isn't always the case. But the thing is a memory leak is essentially you lose all reference to something, but you haven't told it that you're not using it anymore. Because with unmanaged code, you have to inform the computer that you're done with that space in memory. So, in essence, you end up just leaving it there. And if you do this with objects that are being created dynamically, you end up slowly eating all of your memory without actually using any of it. Now, you can cause the same problem in C# by either not allowing something to go out of scope. So for some reason, you're always holding on to a reference of absolutely everything, which is a bad idea. And there are ways to deal with that. Where you know where things are, yet you still have a method of removal, which gets into disposables. But that even still can cause problems if you're not careful. The other big thing is C# does allow you to create pointers in what's known as unsafe code. And the reason it's called unsafe is when you create an unsafe block and you create a pointer to something, C# at that moment says, good luck, have fun, I'm down, I'm out, this pointer is not mine, I don't care about it. And in that sense, you can end up screwing yourself by having memory leaks exist, because you essentially, that when you make that shift, you move into unmanaged code. So C# is my choice because when I don't need to be when I don't need unmanaged power, and I instead want the speed of coding, because taking the time to manage your own memory, well, you can do it better, takes time. I don't always need that time. I don't need to spend that time for the small performance hit that I take. Instead, I write manage code like normal and it works fine. But if I need either I need that performance or I need access to certain things, I can take and work in a space that lets me spend that time. Now, mind you, even still, no matter what, even if I wrote C# with pointers everywhere and did everything, I will still have a performance hit, and that is because there is a background process that is designated to deal with pointers that will still run. It is still there. So if ever comes to the point that I don't use any part of what is known as the garbage collector, really I should be moving away from C#. The biggest problem that I have with it is C# has certain language features that I like. That's not what that's called. It's called the tessellator domain. Okay. So basically, yeah, that's why I'm working on this very tedious process of moving classes that exist. If you want to see these specific classes in their entirety, this one is specifically called D3D underscore shader underscore just no, D3D12. That's the name of the actual class in DirectX. And I am copying it pretty much word for word, mimicking its layout, because this is a class that only contains data, so you can trade a pointer for this type, which is identical to the DirectX type, and when you trade the pointer across, as long as it's still formatted the same, which the compiler will end up compiling these identically and sorting them the same way, even if it does optimizations and moves things around to better fit them into memory, this will be a clone of this. But the difference being is this is a managed class. It's specifically called a value class, where this would be just a struct. I think this is a structure, but the difference between class and structure, if you don't know, is minimal and pointless. Basically, if I put this as a structure, I don't need this public line here. It doesn't actually change the way the class gets laid out. But the fact that this is value has to do with how it gets stored in memory, which is some extra bit of information you need to give when you do manage code. I specifically put as many things as I can as value. Value is not a good thing for something that you want access to in many places that where the information is consistent. Because a value class gets passed by copying all of its information. Unless you specifically pass it via pointer, which is what I'm doing here. But it's generally something you use when you have literally just lists of information. Because most often, those lists are smaller, and you probably will actually want them just stored as values and copied over. But in the event that that is not what you want, then you want like this shader reflection class that I was actually working on before. You want a reference class. This is a ref class, which this will naturally be passed by reference, and when you copy it, it's copied by reference. Unless you call this constructor, which no one has access to except for internally, because this is something you should never call and should never need to call. Because the only way to get this shader reflection is through other functions. And I just prefer that I have control over the internal variable, even though it's exactly the same. As the internal class. But because of the way that managed code has to work, you can't have a public unmanaged pointer, and that would create a public unmanaged pointer. So instead we just leave it as it is. Okay, signature. I passed it. You don't have it. You have... No, you don't. Okay. Oh, it's another structure. This is a shader. Do I have it already? Nope. Don't. Okay. We're gonna go back here. Save all. So yeah, basically, I'm writing this so I can work my way. There are existing wrappers like this that exist. One of the main ones is SharpDX. I don't entirely like the way they go about it, and I'm just kind of curious if going this route might be better. And just the way that it implements it. Because they use what's known as pinvoke, which is designed to move methods, but they use it to move entire classes. I'm not sure if that causes a performance hit or anything of that nature. So we're gonna find out, and honestly, I get to learn these libraries better. Going through this way and systematically seeing every function I have access to. Once I'm done, at least with the base, I may put this up on GitHub. I'm thinking about doing that, and I may even do that even sooner than finished. So other people can work on it, and other people can basically benefit from it. Alright. Capitalize. And once I get done with this, which hopefully won't take too much longer, I'm actually going to be moving on to writing an engine. With DirectX 12. Which is a very large undertaking. But in my opinion, it has a lot of merit. Okay, so this is very... this is gonna be fun. Yep. Yep, doesn't exist yet. So... another... I don't know why I felt the need to scroll, considering it's pinned up here, but... And hopefully my intention with building this engine is to build something better than exists currently, which is a task in and of itself, as we already have some pretty nice engines that exist today, you know, Unreal, Unity, Frostbite now, and quite a few internal engines that are even further along and better. But what I'm going to be going for is hopefully to make one that, without trying to find a way to say it without saying exactly everything. And the only reason I have a problem saying everything is because I want to be the first one to accomplish this. But basically, I have some ideas for making an engine that would be improving on problems that I see with current engines. It may not be as flashy or capable of the same render pipelines that a lot of engines currently have, you know. I don't expect that I'm going to beat out Unreal in terms of visuals at this point, or Frostbite for that matter. ID. But if I could manage that, it'd be cool. And one day is the hope that it could grow big enough to be capable of beating out any engine. I don't expect that that's ever going to happen, because unfortunately there's a reason that multiple engines exist. There is never going to be the engine, at least in my opinion. Not everyone agrees, but in my opinion, it's not faction, factor. You'll never see an Omni engine, at least not the way that we build engines. But also with this engine, I would like to build a game. And that game is actually partly going to, well, it's actually very much based on the D&D campaign that I am currently running. Which, for those, if anyone's watching this who hasn't seen the Ioran Chronicle, either if you're watching this on Twitch or on YouTube, is a currently running game following a group of adventurers who are currently lost in an underground city searching for a way out and hopefully home. As prior to being in the underground city, they were stuck on an island, so as they're not so much better off, but and that game in general is very interesting because unlike most D&D campaigns, the party's not 100% together. They're not really a party. And I'm not going to say that that's not partially to some of the things I had said starting out this campaign, but ultimately they made a lot of characters that don't trust people. And with that, with this very not trusting nature, there hasn't been a lot of effort put into building that relationship, and it'll be interesting as things move forward. Just for kind of a idea for anyone watching this at a later time, we're gonna be on episode 7, I believe, next week. So when we kind of hit that point, it's gonna kind of be a shift in how it's sorry, brain fart of what I was entirely saying. So basically, just so you know, we're going to be moving on to episode 7. This is week after episode 6. Unfortunately, not everyone could be here, so we didn't end up playing. There will be times where we will play without all the party, and we've actually done it once. With the ranger was gone one time, and it allowed for some cool moments, but we particularly ended on a space that I decided wasn't conducive to not having my entire party there, especially not the fighter. The fighter especially was built with that thought in mind that if need be, I can play the fighter. I know the fighter rather well. But at the same time, Lauren, who is playing Aaron, I want her to have some of that experience, those experiences that are going to come up, and some of the very neat, cool things about her character hopefully will come up relatively soon. But unfortunately, I can't control the party's actions, so when that comes up, depends on how things go. And on top of it, they particularly stopped at a very story crucial point, which might be interesting next week. I hope no one's in the chat trying to find out anything specific from me babbling on. I'm not talking specifically about audience members, I'm talking about players. Wish I had my camera set up, but I probably should eventually buy another camera. So I have one here. But I can't afford to do that at the moment. Anyways, I ADD'd really bad right there. So yeah, but I'm gonna be building a game. Not so much. I'm not building a game based on the D&D campaign. The campaign is based on a D&D game that I have. I can't speak. I can't English. The D&D game is based on the game that I have been working on, and that world, and that trying to help me flesh out what was going on, and entirely all that I wanted to be there at the moment. Because ultimately, building a world as big as what I would like, it's difficult. Because if you want it to feel deep and you want it to feel impactful, ultimately, there's only so much you can do on your own. And that's kind of where I got to. And so I had a group of friends, and we said, okay, make characters in this world, build something. And we did it with the intention to play a D&D game. Specifically, I don't know if I've mentioned this too often on the show, is the fact that they actually were told at the very beginning of all of this that there's a very decent chance that their characters will die. And that's part of the game that I'm building, is not a game that's going to be holding their hands. And I'm mainly talking about the D&D game. Obviously, with the no, it was okay, I did do that. I need to know. But I like games that have an element of fear for the players, because in my opinion, if you don't have that constant question of, and I don't want to listen to this song right now. We're just gonna, sure, I'm fine with that. Sorry, ADD because the music is distracting. But essentially, I wanted a world that not only feels real, I want it to feel real to the players. And so one of the big things that I needed to set out was death as a possibility. Because ultimately, when you take death away as this constant looming possibility, that resurrection is norm and things like that, in my opinion, players have a tendency to make stupid decisions because they know there are no consequences for their characters. Their characters will survive. So when we started this, I told everyone that that's not the case. And it's not saying that I am out to get their characters. Specifically, I want to say it was in episode 4, when the ranger went unconscious. My heart kind of stopped with that constitution roll that Anna had to make, because I was worried that her character was going to die right there. Because the thing is while I do want that looming fate of death, I don't want to kill level 2 characters, but ultimately, I will say that situation she found herself in was a situation created by the group. It was not a situation that I had planned for. They kind of stopped on those stairs, and the character who has a magical weapon, and that's pretty much everyone's aware that the weapon is magical, decided to forego using said magical weapon for close combat. And for a different set of skills that were not her preferred set of skills. Which is why she ended up hitting 0. The problem was the creature that they were facing. I'm not going to entirely name it at this point because it isn't. While it's mimicking a lot of typical D&D creatures, the creature itself is something unique to this world. But the creature had life drain. And it's an ability that you can pull off of the Ghast in the monster manual. And that's where I pulled it from. It takes from maximum HP until the next short rest. Should you fail a 10, it's a Constitution save of DC 10. The thing is, if HP drops to 0, though, like had happened with Anna, if the Constitution save is failed, their max HP drops to 0. And if your max HP is 0, you are dead. You do not get death saving throws. You cannot be revived. Well, you can be revived, but this world doesn't have reviving magics. And even if it did, the party has no healer. Even if they had a healer, though, at that point, they don't have a healer who is capable of even casting Revivify. Revivify is a 3rd level spell. I don't think I think you at least have to be 3rd or 4th level to cast any sort of resurrection magic. And I set out at the beginning that I don't want that to be something that you can count on. And I actually never went out and told the party that they couldn't play clerics. I just said clerics were rare, which I've been told by several people that wasn't quite what I said, which it was. But they thought that meant that there were no clerics and that they couldn't play cleric. That wasn't what I said. I like the fact that there isn't a cleric in this group because of certain things that will go on during this adventure, and so having a cleric would have access to certain skills and abilities that would make certain things, certain misdirections, red herrings that I'm going to throw at them, useless. Because there's a skill for that. So, yeah. So, going on beyond that, the game that I'm working on and will be working on first doesn't actually take place with Aberranth and the city that they've come that they're currently in. That adventure, while is an adventure I eventually want to make, and I'll probably change up certain things just so it's a little bit fresh and a little bit new. But and ultimately it'll be more fleshed out as I build out the city and create the entirety of Aberranth, because Aberranth is currently a half-baked sketch that I have of city quarters and things like that, but I've not finished it, and I'm not even as far as I would like it to be. Mainly because and it was part of poor planning on my part, and I didn't get time to work on it, is I started actually drawing the map and laying out things down on the opposite side of Aberranth from where the party currently is. Choices. So we are hopefully going to see things get more interesting going forward with the game, and then once I get the first game out, it will actually be a precursor, and it will kind of be a better introduction to the world, which is something I do want to do, and I will probably have to spend some time at recording some stuff for, is giving you guys a very nice world history. I'd love to do that. And by world history, you won't know everything, but you will know what the party members have been told up to this point. Um, and I have no problem like describing it right now. It's not a big deal to me, but ultimately I would like a very nice higher quality kind of video-esque format that may end up being kind of our intro. Um, to the game each week that will kind of give you an idea of what this world is and what's going on, because I do often forget that not everything that I've mentioned to the players is something known to everyone. Um, that being said, I still do know a lot of this information, and I do mention it on occasion. And one of the biggest things is the way that the magic system works. It's not a traditional Dungeons and Dragons magic. It'd be lovely to say that I could just pick up D&D's magic system and say, yeah, that's exactly what I want. But I couldn't. Because ultimately, that magic system isn't what I needed. When I went to build this system with the game, I wanted a magic system that was more complete. Because I often, and it's not that magic in games have to this point been terrible, and even especially very much the way that Dungeons and Dragons has a nice magic system for what the game is, but it's a tabletop game. It would not be as much fun for you guys or fun to watch to go with the entire system that I'm going to be going with, because it's designed as an interactive experience. So it's not something that I can honestly say is going to be riveting to watch. So I was trying to find this nice middle ground between the Dungeons and Dragons system that works and the system that I wanted to create for this world and give to the players kind of that taste, and even to the viewers kind of the taste of what this world's magic looks like. And ultimately that ended out in what I created with the mage class, which is all our magic users run with the mage class. And even when other classes will get magic, they will be a modified version of their own magic to work with this system. And one of the big differences that I wanted was, first of all, I didn't like. I've never super been a fan of systems that set levels to certain things, because nothing is that way. The world, it doesn't work on a tiered system. The world is continuous. Unless we want to talk about quantum mechanics, but we're not going to talk about quantum mechanics. Let me get that out straight. If you wanted to go into quantum mechanics, yes, quantum mechanics, everything does work on a quantum level on a tiered system, but my point being that things seem continuous, and especially knowledge and growth are the idea of a continuous system. So I kind of want that idealism in the system that I built, which is why the actual, and it's not really become a problem. I probably mentioned it a couple times during combat, but most of the spells that have been used up to this point are cantrips. Cantrips are spells that are of such low level that I did not even they cost nothing. They're so easy, so innate that it requires no effort from the caster. Because I again trying to find that nice balance between the 5th edition rule set and what I wanted. I thought cantrips really were something that should stay. I wouldn't see a reason to remove them. Okay. Yeet. Heat requires flex. But so that's one of the big things is that system is, and it's a modified. So basically, when I went through, I looked at some variant rules for spell points. There's variant rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And ultimately, I just don't like the way that it scales. I find it a little overpowered. When you get to 9th level. I mean, not 9th level. 9th level spells. When you hit that point where you can do 9th level spells, in my mind, you become really, really powerful. Because 9th level spells aren't that expensive. At least not expensive enough. And then the other thing is, I wanted to space it out a little bit more for the kind of second thing that I wanted to add into the system. Which would be spellcrafting. It's one of those weird things that I didn't quite understand why it doesn't really exist very easily in Dungeons and Dragons. There's not like a section that talks about if you wanted to create your own spell, unless you're in the Dungeon Master's Guide. If I want to create a spell, and I'm like, but you know, that idea of a player deciding that, okay, I want a spell that does this, and more importantly, decides that on the fly. That they choose in battle that they just want to do this thing and they use their talents and their abilities. We haven't even gotten to spellcrafting in general. That's a 3rd level skill, and then 6th level is when they get the ability to combat craft, or quick craft as it's called, which allows players to create a spell in the moment. They can only do it once at 6th level, and they don't even get like at max they can do it 3 times per short rest. I think might be long rest. I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and look. But the idea behind that being that you can choose to make a spell at that very moment when you need it. But more importantly, the 3rd level ability allows you to, at any time, you can start to spend time to create a spell, which allowed for, in my opinion, a good way to learn new spells without without either just saying that you learn spells magically overnight when you level up, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Or you have the reverse of you have to go search for every spell or be taught it by somebody. And then that requires that you have NPCs there. And not that I couldn't have NPCs there. Like, even so far, we have the Archmagus. He would actually be a vast resource. But you'd have to go spend time with him every time you leveled to learn something. And I'm like, I don't want that to be something that has to be done. So instead, I give players a way to invest into it. And also, more importantly, one of the big things that I wanted to kind of make it do is proficiency with a specific spell or skill is something that you can also gain. You don't instantly overnight learn an entire spell. You can start to learn it. And you can start to kind of get the grasp. You can set out. And based on rolls, you can get better, worse versions of the spell. And by better versus worse, it depends on, like, side effects. Are there side effects? Are there, aside from any side effects, does the spell cost more than normal? And more often than not, you know, it'll cost more, but it may not have any undue side effects that you didn't intend. But it is a possibility that every spell you make, if you didn't do well enough, might not entirely do what you intended it to. Which kind of gives this idea of guess and check, I guess, or this idea of creating something that isn't wholly stable at first. Now, if you spend more time with it before actually using the spell, you can get it to the point that it is fine. It entirely works the way you intended it to. Which I don't even think I need this line because I did auto. I guess I do. So that kind of is some of the things that I thought about when I was building that system. And we've gotten so little, and it's kind of been the hardest part of this entire thing, of building this entire words. Building this entire campaign is I know where I want this story to end. And I know some of the events that I want to happen along the way. But a big majority of the middle of the story, I don't really know what I want to happen. And so that's kind of getting made up as we go. Like, a lot of the opening, I had planned. I knew what was going on. I had this very concrete plan, which sometimes worked. But you know, players and dealing with choices that they made. But even past like, and some of my problems with where, like, I honestly don't think that entirely pacing's been the greatest, but it's sometimes been hard to anticipate where players are gonna go. Um, and I'm still trying to get a very good idea of where the party lies, and unfortunately the players are still finding out where their characters entirely lie. I think that's kind of been a little obvious with Edmund, as his greed has slowly begun to take the better part of him. Um, I'm not sure if that's entirely on purpose or because it'll probably get him in trouble sooner or later. Won't say too much on that, as honestly I don't actually know when it will get him in trouble, but also I like the mystery of all of this, and that's ultimately why I started working on this campaign and doing what I've been doing. Is I like having that mystery that the players are constantly trying to figure out. Ultimately, I'm worried that these characters are a little too suspicious of everything and everyone, which I'm thinking I might have some things happen that will deal with this constant need to be always suspicious of everyone. I've got a couple ideas of what I might do to kind of deter the behavior a little bit and curb it. Not that mistrust isn't interesting and hasn't been slightly, up until this point, I haven't entirely said that they shouldn't be mistrustful, but I more wanted mistrust within the party rather than mistrust of everything. And the thing is I never told the players that they needed to be distrustful of everything. And I honestly think certain characters wouldn't be if situation was different. And that's some of that will be hopefully things that will start to come up soon, where you start to see certain characters' reasons for being as on edge as they are. But at the same time, there are a couple other characters that I'm not sure if it's entirely valid for how on edge they are. But it's a choice that the players make. And those choices are what craft the story to be what it is. It's just been interesting because we either have the greed to end all greed, which has motivated Edmund for the past couple of episodes to an extent that I'm debating about what I want to do about it. Or we have the people who want to talk to no one and want nothing to do with anything because they're afraid that anyone and everyone is going to stab them in the back. Which is where I guess Ashlyn has kind of been the odd man out with all of that, as Danny's done a very good job making her be very friendly. And that's generally just because that's the way Danny enjoys playing. She likes making friendly characters. While maybe slightly deceptive, I'm not going to take too much out of that because that is... Everyone seems to be kind of deceptive, and it's kind of those characters that they made. So I kind of knew that going in. It's just been more surprising how... Like, going in, I knew that people had some mistrust. Didn't quite realize the extent. So, it's an interesting thing to see and kind of get used to the fact that literally none of my players trust each other. I need to go back to here. And helps if I spell right. So I hope everyone is enjoying the series. I have mixed feelings about dealing with not comments, chat. Because the problem is the group as a whole is ADD to the max. So that's unfortunately the couple of times that chat has been up, people have been so ADD about it that I worry. And it is current. It's been currently up the last couple of streams. It's just there were a couple of games where we focused on it a little too much, or everyone else did as I was trying to talk, and something that we had to deal with. So it's kind of this weird decision of how much importance do I place on chat, because ultimately really we can't be responsible for always paying attention to chat, because we spend a lot of time playing, and to kind of half our attention span would not... I don't care. It would just hurt kind of the performance that everyone's giving and what's going on, so... Okay. So I've actually finished this section, I'm gonna really quick kind of go through, and I've got to kind of check something as I go through with these, and then I'm gonna go back through the last few. This can actually be deleted. I didn't end up using this. Delete. If I need it again, I can recreate it, but at this point I haven't needed it. And for anyone who's kind of weirded out that I've only made one CPP file, move, delete. It's just because most of these files aren't quite large enough, in my opinion, to warrant the creation of a CPP file. They literally have bare minimums in them of stuff. So a header file makes, and obviously for the value types, it makes no sense whatsoever to make them. Okay, so we're gonna create a, and what we're gonna do here, and it's kind of what I want to do, is I want to do kind of I think you actually belong better here. These, for anyone who can kind of see this, I know this is a little small, but this kind of file tree thing here isn't actually a file tree. It's a filter structure, because you can't really do file trees that well. In C#. I mean, and C++, not C#. Hash. I'm gonna kind of flip how this works, and then we'll just do star. I think this will work out better for these. And then we're just gonna down the list and convert a few things. So, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them in chat. Or if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, feel free to comment, and I'll try and hopefully I'll get back on to and be available to answer any questions and comments for YouTube quickly. I can't promise quite as quickly as I would in if you're here right now while we're live. I still don't know why this is doing this. It's upset because it's not supposed to have that, but that's not my problem. I don't entirely like some of the formatting rules that they set in this, because it doesn't entirely make too much sense. It's just for ease, I wanted to put certain functions in certain classes. I technically, I guess, don't need them here. And I could take it out. I might. I don't know. Um, Also, for anyone who is curious about this, just as a side comment that I probably should make about what I'm doing here, not so much about anything else that I've talked about so far. Um, Even though I have talked about this earlier, but basically, if you're curious, some of like you'll notice that this has some strange little formatting rules that it's trying to keep me to keep. And that is because this is specifically using C++ common extensions. It's a extended version of C++ that has some what's the word I'm looking for? Patterns and practices encoded into the compiler, well, into the static compiler. The actual compiler doesn't force the rules, thankfully. And the reason that I'm doing that is because so there are 3 versions of C++ that you can use when you do stuff like this. There's C++ CX, C++ CLI, and then just C++. Now, you can't use pure C++ to make managed wrappers. It's just not. It doesn't work that way. Now, C++ CLI uses the common language runtime to work. That isn't ported to every system type, which... Okay, that never got finished. That's fine. And well, right now I kind of am doing a whole bunch of non-public data. Come on, figure out your shit. There you go. And well, okay. Keep getting distracted. But well, I can't run all of this code on a machine that doesn't have DirectX, so not a Windows machine. I'm still trying to get used to it because hopefully eventually I want to kind of make a version of this that runs in Vulkan. That's the name I'm looking for. Because Vulkan in and of itself can run on any system. Aside from that, I would like to port it to pretty much every architecture that can support this style. Hopefully keeping as much of these values as I can in there. So I kind of want to keep this as consistent as I can. Well, it may not be entirely necessary to keep it, well, not so much necessary as it might be entirely possible, as low as this is. Okay, I did get that. It may not always be possible to keep exact. I want to keep it as close as I can. And so right now I'm kind of striving to, like, as you can tell, I've stripped out all of the D3D12, D3D, or whatever labels, because in my opinion that tags it as it's DirectX. So we're gonna pull those out. And most of the time it's that they weren't entirely necessary anyways. A lot of these aren't gonna... Okay. This is a value class. It's just, unfortunately, that's just the way that this has to be, because I can't have void stars available. I don't know why it doesn't like public nested types. But it wouldn't like what I would replace it with, so... Okay. Now... I'm gonna do allocator equals. The other thing that I do need to build, which I didn't do in anything else, but this already has it. Okay, so it has that delete line. Does blob pointer have it? Okay, so this is a destructor. I just want to that's this still kind of dealing with. Okay, so real quick, go back to shader, because shader has most of its stuff done. Function, parameter, reflection. Function, reflection. This is just going through and systematically writing deletes. Okay. This is library. That's fine. So, and this is just to deal with when these finally do go out of... Actually, I'm wondering, can you do... No. It doesn't know that. Okay. Yep. Get a reflection constant buffer. Reflection constant buffer. So yeah. We'll probably be going for another like half an hour, and then I will be done. I might stream tomorrow something similar to this, where I'm just kind of working. I've wanted to do it for a little bit now, but time is really what it comes down to. I haven't had a ton of time to do stuff like this. It'll be earlier in the day, because I work late at night. I just don't work Sundays, which is why this has worked so far. And I don't plan on ever working nights on Sundays. So. Did do the last one right. Yeah. Okay. Oh. There we go. That's done. Okay, and we're just gonna do a nice save all. I'm just gonna clear out all but my pinned, which are just my enums. All my enumerations, which are kept in one file, which is really bad practice, but don't care. So we do command list D3D12 star list. Obviously that's not going to entirely work because I need to finish writing command list. There we go. And then this already has a delete line. Q should already have a delete line too. Most of these should have their when I did this, I was doing that more regularly. I just didn't do it in. Okay. File mappings, execute event, get clock calibration, command key description, set marker signal. File mappings, fence, create command queue. Wait, nope, that's fine, because it's dealing with its own internal. And I think anyone that uses this format is fine. Description, command, signature, which I think is how most of these work. Thankfully, I don't think most of these are created by the device, so I'm accessing straight in there. Unlike when I was doing the shader stuff. Okay, yeah, it's good. Common invoices. I'm curious. This is stuff that I keep track of because I have to. If it's one thing or another. Why are you still this way? Public root sig CS node mask cache PSO flags. And then we delete the rest of this because I've just gotten to the point where I don't see the point. Oh, root signature requires a. Wait. ID 12 root signature ref new root signature. These are the times. Okay, root sig equals value dash signature, and then this is okay, so this is gonna continue, but this is gonna go down. There. And then this goes to an internal, because it can't be floating about. Okay, so, and then constant buffer description, Oranum's CPU descriptor handle, which already has that. Oh no, I think this is because this is how I often get CPU descriptor handles. Okay, that's all good except for, does it have, yep, it's got its destructor. Yep, sensible descriptions, wait, yep. Yep. I'm also unhappy about that. Okay. Equals keep. Because of the way that this is written, that's actually perfectly fine. Ref new. I just want okay. Now I do know that there is a significant number. Oh wait, whoa, ooh. He's got to go to stars. Realize you no longer match your parent. Okay, copy. Research tape. That's bad. cleanup. So I'm done with this cleanup. Probably be out of time, but I will probably show what I'm working on next. If I have time. Oh. Oh, yeah. From an ID 312 dice. 2 star dice. I think this is just here because, like, definition does anything. Roll all the way up. Just delete device. Oh, this should actually be in public. Okay. Then we were down to draw argument, draw indexed arguments, fence from a ID3D 12 fence, star fence. Fence equals fence. GPU descriptor handle is just a value type. Graphics command list. Okay, graphics command list is from an ID 3D12. Graphics command list 1 star. List. List equals list. Not super necessary to do this, I'm starting to realize, but we'll finish it out because I do want the ability to have these if I do need them. If I need to expose them at any time, I can expose them. And then that's just a movement of one of this line up. Heap description, heap properties, command list, index buffer. This thing. One more thing, command, copy. Yeah, packed map info, pipeline library. This is a pipeline library. Come on. And then library. Pipeline state. Pipe state equals pipe state. Query heap. Do. Be back to. Oh, is this just the Arrival album mix? Ah, it is. The whole album mixed together. Rasterizer description, render, Ah, and that's just because of the way that has to be. Wait. Ref new. There. There's barrier. And this is our resource class, which will now have a resource ID 3D12 resource star resource resource description, resource transition barrier, resource UV, root, descriptor table, parameter, root signature. There. Version deserializer. Yeah, I know that all of these are tools. Take stuff. Report. Cool. And then debug requires this. One. Okay. This always reminds me of the opening of Dark Souls 1. It's the way that it sounds. Yep. Okay, and then this one will also need it. Debug and debug queue. Debug device. Debug device? Debug. Okay, and then we do a glare. I think, nope, that's it. Okay. So, I have finished up large sections. I think I got all the structures. I'm just real quick gonna run through and check everything to make shader version type.
Transform your state of mind.
I should have that. Should be in the video description. Did I miss it? Or is it, okay, I missed this one. I'm just going to put it in its own file. I'm not going to call it shader enums because it's literally one shader. But, oh, that's interesting. Certain things don't show up. Things I didn't pay attention to. Okay, anyways. Hash include. I should probably also have not named this header. Name, we're going to call it shader version type. And then I don't want this. I want space Dragonbone space core namespace native namespace graphics namespace shader public enum class shader version type, and its pixel shader was 0, vertex shader equals 1, geometry shader equals 2, all shader equals 3, domain shader equals 4, compute shader equals 5. For sure. Shader. And then reserved 0 equals 0x fff 0. Okay, so it mimics the original. Okay, so I think in a minute we're probably gonna finish out here. So and I realize the music's probably not quite as loud to you guys as it is to me, but so with all this, I'm probably gonna end the stream a couple minutes early, but about 9 o'clock. As for where I'm gonna go with this project, for those of you who are interested, I've gotten all the. I'm gonna actually real quick just go and. Alright, so you can actually see the instead of the window. So basically, go to the D3D12 reference. I've gone through the core, the debug layer, the shader. I'm not doing 11 on 12 as that's actually not recommended. Helper structures and functions, I will. Let me see. Pipeline parser. I may do that next, but I'm gonna have to open that up and look at it. Things that I probably won't do in stream. But the big thing that I have yet to do, while I've done most of all of these, shader reference. That's not the right one. But I need the core reference. I haven't added these core functions here. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 functions. And then obviously I need these helper guys. There's, I think, a few of these. Yeah, we'll probably look and see. Interface there. Not sure if I will do this or not. It may be something for later, because at this point I'm not sure how useful these look. Some of these look useful, some of them don't. We'll probably have to look and decide. But when we get to that point, the big ones that I want to get knock out soon are these, because then this will allow Direct 3D 12 to pretty much be done. But the very first one that we're going to have to get into requires an adapter, which we're actually looking at that. The ion nodes probably, common interfaces in general should probably be moved out. So right now they're in core. Should probably be in common. Which really has nothing to do other than my organizational skills. But so most of Direct 3D is done. These are going to be DXGI, and so we're going to have to delve into DXGI, which is the interop library. For anyone who's curious, especially a few people I know on YouTube, and you guys may see this, have seen my stuff with Direct 2D. After talking with some guys at AMD, which was super helpful, they mentioned that Direct 2D is actually something not suggested to be used. If you have really, there isn't a good reason to do it, as our hardware is optimized for 3D, such to the point that it is actually more time consuming to use Direct2D. Don't ask me why, but that's what the guys at AMD, and I know this was backed up by some NVIDIA guys. That's what they said to me. So basically, they said don't use 11 on 12, don't use Direct2D, avoid those things. If you're gonna do DirectX 12, and this was kind of all throughout talking with industry people, you're gonna do DirectX 12. Do DirectX 12. Don't do a game in 11 and then port it to 12, because ultimately that's just going to be disappointing. You're not going to get what you want out of it. Go to DirectX 12 for the reasons that DirectX 12 is unique. But realize with it comes a large overhead and a lot more effort that you're going to have to give. So, yeah, for anyone who's interested in what I've been doing, for those of you who kind of checked out because of D&D, sorry that there wasn't D&D this week. Hopefully next week. And hopefully my computer seems to finally be back in order. I've had a couple minor issues back and forth recently, and I wasn't quite sure what was causing it. I'm actually going to remove that display capture though. This don't need to be showing my screen, full screen anymore. And I can't spell graphics. Fun fact. But yeah, so that's kind of where I want to leave this at. I might stream tomorrow. If I don't, I'm sorry. I'm going to try. For people who are watching this on YouTube, you won't even see this by tomorrow, because for anyone who's actually curious, it usually takes about 2 days to convert videos and get it all ready. So usually things pop up on Tuesday. But yeah, so appreciate anyone who came out and joined me, even if you didn't stay until the end here and you're watching this later. I do appreciate it. Next week, I'll see you guys back in the Chronicle. So yeah, see you guys next time. Bye!